What's up, how you doing? Here we are today, beautiful day right now, and I feel like some tea. So we have Tibetan monk's tea. It's a combination of black and green teas and floral Tibetan blend. Floral Tibetan blend. So that's what it looks like. So we have our little thing here, our water, and have a little cup. That's the back. Got a cup on the top, and you put the loose leaf in there. Let it soak, and then the front looks like that. Got a little water in there. So that's a good smell. That smells really good. It's like something you can drink all day. Green and black tea with a special Tibetan monk blend. And this is a product of, who's this from? I think Paris. From Paris. So let's get started here. I don't want too much horsepower. No sugar in this. I find it unnecessary. I've never had this tea before. This is my first time, just for full disclosure. But just the way it smells, I don't know, maybe add a little bit, but it smells too good to be bitter. We take the cup and we're going to put a little bit inside this. Put a teaspoon in there. All right. So while we wait for the water to heat up, we're going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite cartoons of all time, the Flintstones. Big fan of Flintstones. But I'm just curious, who's taking Flintstones vitamins these days? Yeah, I have it right here. Flintstones vitamins. In my time, every kid knew who the Flintstones were. They were very popular. I loved watching the Flintstones. I loved the storylines. I love the fact that these best friends lived next door to each other and they did things together. They went bowling, golfing, all kind of things. They had adventures. But what kids go into a store and ask for the Flintstones? I remember I used to take these when I was a kid. And you know, I mean, it's basically 100% of the RDA. Nothing more, nothing less. Still have that weird fruit smell. But for me, I thought the images were cool. You'd see this is Fred and Wilma. And my favorite one, of course, was Bam Bam. You know, when you're a kid, you think the Bam Bam vitamin is more potent just because of the character. And there he is. There's Bam Bam as the bat. So I would always eat the Bam Bams way before I ate all the other ones. That Wilma there. But yeah, these are cool vitamins. And Bayer is the company that puts this out. It has vitamin K, it has calcium. I mean, it's complete. Good for kids. But, you know, usually when you make a product like that, it's only because the show is extremely popular. I don't know any kid now that knows anything about the Flintstones. It's like too many years have passed. Anyway, it's heating up. I see the steam. I'm not going to let it boil. I'm going to just heat it up. All right. Let it heat up. I mean, let it soak. Let it soak for a little bit. I hear music. I love these big trucks that go by. I'm a big fan of Peterbilt, so you know, I see them at the truck stop. I go by the truck stop once in a while. You know, I make a pit stop there, and I see Peterbilt, the good ones, the top of the line ones, state of the art, and Kenworth. I wish Peterbilt would put out like a 4x4. I would get that. So my kids have started school. I'm not happy about that. I'd rather spend more time with them, but school's here. They start early. In my time, you got off first part of June, and you were off all the way until the day after Labor Day. Remember, Jerry Lewis would do the telethon, and the next day we had school, and it was a half a day. You know, here they don't have a half a day, they just go right in. Let's see what's going on here. Ooh, spilling it a little bit. Alright, we'll give it a shot now. Well, we're going to have to let it cool off. A little bit hot. That's got a good smell. I remember one year I had gone to Hawaii, and I mean, over there everything tastes good. They had Kona coffee everywhere. We'd stop by and they had 100% Kona coffee brewing, and then the other thing they had was tea, but it was a blend of all sorts of tasty, I don't know, spices, but it was like very flowery tasting. But there was tea in there. It wasn't just you know, what do you call it there, herbal. are horrible. Still too hot. I got this. That gives an electric jolt. Let me see if I can get it in there. If you can see that. So this is pretty cool because you charge it and then you take it with you and you could start a barbecue or, you know, light a candle. I wonder why the Jetsons never had their own vitamins. Pediatrician's #1 choice. Pediatricians still tell you to go buy some Flintstones. They're like, yeah, what should I get my kid for vitamins? And they say, well, we recommend Flintstones. Don't they have a more serious brand, like a serious name brand? I remember my father, when I was a kid, we had these on top of the refrigerator, and every day in the morning, we'd get ready to go to school. Just as we're ready to go out, he would grab the bottle and be like, come over here. And I'd say, give me Bam Bam. So, surprisingly, there's no sugar in this. It says total sugar is 0. This is ages 4 and older. That's good. It could probably use a dash of sugar, which I happen to have. Not too much. It's a little bit bitter. I don't really put, you know, too much. So a couple of times, I found this place in Montana, and they make their own honey there. They have the bees working overtime, and called them up. I think those people have since passed. I mean, I called them up, or they sold it or whatever, but I called them up, and it was an old lady. Picked up the phone, hello, and I said hi, and I told her what I wanted. She's like, oh yes, my husband does that. And then many years had passed, maybe like 10-12 years had passed. I called back because their honey was amazing. It's like the best honey I ever had, and I bought a big 5-gallon thing of it, or 2.5 gallons, like half of the 5-gallon. And it came to my house, brought it upstairs, and I tasted a little bit, and I go, wow, this is amazing honey. So called her back, and she goes, oh, that couple, they sold it and we're the new owners. So I ordered from them another 2.5 gallon thing. It was very good, very tasty. Oh yeah, that is delicious. I highly recommend it. Oh, wow, that is good. So once again, it's Tibetan Monk's Tea. Tibetan Monk's Tea. Black and green teas mixed. Floral Tibetan blend. Now, I'd like to go to Tibet, and I'd like to get a jacket made by the monks, and also a blanket, nice blanket from Tibet. Now, I'm not fascinated with climbing to the top of any of those mountains. Personally, I'm not trained to do that, and that's not something you could just wake up one day and say, I'm doing it. You got to bring oxygen with you. You may faint up there. You may freeze to death. It's not a, not a good experience. But I'd like to go down below, and maybe, 5,000 to 6,000 feet up, onto the Mount Everest mountain, I could do that. But I don't want to go all the way to the top. All these dead bodies along the way, human waste everywhere, freezing, windy. It's just nasty up there. So I'd like to go there someday, and also cross into Pakistan. Pakistan. Okay, go ahead. I don't know where they're going with that. That's a dangerous job. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the fire engines, fire department. They got a lot of power. They got the guy in the back who does the back wheel steering. Always like that. That's a cool position to have. Always doing the. So anyway, I was talking about Pakistan. A lot of people, they hit Pakistan and they immediately think danger. And I think of Pakistan, I don't think of danger. Although it can be, but some war going by. It can be, but I also think of Pakistan as a very beautiful country. The mountains are unbelievable. A lot of people, they don't know that. They think Pakistan is some, country in the middle of nowhere. Well, based on our perception, it may be in the middle of nowhere, but not really. I mean, it's north of India. Is it northwest? But it's beautiful. Some of the best mountains in the world are located in Pakistan. Wow, that is amazing. Like to go there, the tourist area of Pakistan, not the area where people are politically angry. I'll go to the tourist section where people like me would go and hang out. Should call my kids out and try this. There's a lot of beauty on the planet. You know what's another good thing? Getting a nice boat and just, getting a lot of fuel or whatever you need. Solar power, maybe even better. And just taking off, going somewhere, bumping into those uninhabited islands in the South Pacific. I would love to do that, but I don't want to run out of fuel. Then you get lost at sea, and the sea is big. It's not a tiny place. I'm a fan of that movie with Tom Hanks, Castaway. Sometimes I have a dream where I'm stranded on an uninhabited island. Like one that I've mentioned before is where it's pitch black out and somehow I'm in the ocean. I'm floating around in the ocean and I'm exhausted in the dream, and I kind of fall asleep in my dream, which is kind of weird. And then I wake up and I'm washed up on shore on some island, tiny island. And I wake up and the water's coming in, so I have to keep climbing. The island is pointy. It's got a little, shoreline around it, and then it just basically is nothing more than, like a mountain sticking out of the ocean. And I climb, and the water comes up, and then I get all the way to the top, and the water must have I don't know, like a few hundred feet come up, which is impossible, but in the dream, anything's possible. And when I get up there, there's like a big house with people there, and they're kind of barbecuing in the back and chit-chatting, and there I am just spying on them, just watching them. I don't know if they're friendly or, but yeah, that's my my fascination, uninhabited island. When I went to Europe recently, I was fascinated that the airplane was actually flying over Greenland. There was a point in time when you could look down and see Greenland, all white ice, snow, and it was kind of creepy because we were flying over this big, massive, you know, country, and you could see it below. Then on the way back, I look out the window and you could see Death Valley. California is one of the few places anywhere during the flight that you could look down, it was perfectly clear, no clouds. Very beautiful. I felt like I was looking at everything from Google Earth, even though it was right outside the window. Almost done with the tea. I feel like making more. So this tea here, doesn't say the weight. I don't know what the weight is. Anyway, this container is, oh, here it is. So 3.5 ounces, 100 grams. $15, but I could go for some more, so I'm gonna make some more, and I may be back on, maybe not, nobody really knows. Alright, I'm back. I made the tea. I didn't videotape the whole process, but it's a repeat of what I had done at the beginning of the video. So I have the tea here. Man, that's delicious. Now, if you're ever in the store and you see this, pick it up. Just a little bit of sugar, that's it, or a honey. I may get some honey from that place in Montana. There's many places in Montana that have honey. And even up here on the highway, when I go out to Palmdale, no, the other way. Yeah, at Palmdale. You see a whole area set up where the bees are making their honey. And then if you go down the other way towards Devil's Punch Bowl, there's a store there that sells local honey from the desert. So it's pretty good. I've had all different varieties there, and they're all good. Amazing. So here we are, quiet day. Well, it's ironic I say that, but in the background you can hear the fire engines. That's, you know, a fact of life. That's the way it goes. That's the way of the world. There's always something happening like that. I remember the old days when I was a kid, there was always some old guy in the neighborhood. Spring, summertime, they would be out in their backyard and nice chair, and they'd have a radio next to them, and they'd be listening to, you know, nice music or the baseball game. You know, they'd have their little lemonade thing, drinking it, listening to the baseball game, and I'd watch them. I'd go, you know, or some of them would be on their back porch, have the radio going, you know, baseball game, talk radio. I am a big fan of talk radio. I've been that way since I was around 14. I had a little radio in my room I got into the habit of listening to the radio before I'd go to sleep, and it was usually AM talk. I'd put it on, and it was like one of those stations I had was no topics. Call in with whatever you wanted to talk about, but the only stipulation was that it had to be light. Couldn't go into deep things. So anyway, I would put it on at around 10. Go home to your mama there. Go to your mama's house. Anyway, I'd put it on at like 10:45, 10:30, around there. And my schedule in those days was 11 to 7. I would go to sleep at 11 on the dot, not in bed, and then look around and fall asleep at like 11:30. No, I would be in bed at like 10:30, 10:45, but I would be out like a light at 11. And 7 o'clock I was up like a rooster. So that was my schedule. My whole life, my childhood life was like that. 11 to 7, 11 to 7. No matter what. Saturday, same thing. 11 to 7. Sunday, 11 to 7. I didn't sleep in. I wasn't one of those kids that slept in. I would get up. There were kids that on the weekends, they wake up at 11. I got up at 7 every Saturday and Sunday. 11 o'clock. I had to watch my cartoons, and then on Sunday I had to watch Davy and Goliath, which in those days I didn't even see it as a religious show. I thought it was just the adventures of a kid and his dog. And later on I started seeing all the clues there. But yeah, at the beginning when I would watch it when I was little, I thought it was just about the life of this kid, playing around all day with his buddies and his dog that spoke English. But I remember though, I'd watch the old guys, they'd go out in the back there listening to the radio. And I was talking about the radio, yeah, that's right. So anyway, I would listen to talk radio at night, and I would enjoy it a lot. Like, I would listen for about a half hour, and then I would fall asleep. And then once in a while I would kind of wake up at around a few minutes before 2, and I would hear the guy signing off. He would say goodbye and all that, and I was like, wow, it's 2 o'clock, because back then I never stayed up until 2. So to me, those hours were magical. It was like way out in the distance. So I did that for a long time, sleeping with the radio on. I know there's a Billy Joel song, Sleeping with the Television On, but I slept with the radio on. I don't do that anymore. Now I fall asleep in silence. And actually it's been decades since I had that little habit of falling asleep with the radio on. But every once in a while, because nighttime sound travels more than daytime. Daytime kind of gets muffled out. But I would have the radio on low, and my father, I guess, would wake up at like, 3 a.m. or something, and once in a while I'd hear the door open up and he'd say, shut that off. And I'd reach over and shut it off, half asleep, half awake. But I also went through a music phase where I would put on the music. And in those days, if anybody knows anything, I would listen to David Allen Boucher, Bedtime Magic 106.7. I don't know if he's still on now. I haven't heard David Allen Boucher in many years, but that was the guy I would listen to at night, David Allen Boucher, the mystery guy. And I would listen to that, and then I'd fall asleep. And then there was a period of time in the 80s where in the morning I would wake up to the sound of Lauren and Wally. It was a show on the radio back then, Lauren and Wally, and it was 105.7 WVBF. It's not that anymore. Now it's changed. I don't know if it's WRKO, but in those days it was Lauren and Wally on WVBF. I loved listening to those guys in the morning. They retired. Pretty sure they're still alive. And there was a guy on the radio, his name was Tom Doyle. And Tom Doyle, I knew him. I don't think he remembers me now, but I knew him, and he would, I'd see him at least probably 3 times a week in those days. But yeah, big fan of Lauren and Wally. And then got a little bit older and was listening to WBCN. WBCN, probably the best station in the country. Went out of business. Remember Charles Laquadera? Yeah, I used to have a lot of like T-shirts. WBCN. Was it 104.1? I think it was 104.1. Good station though, good quality. When I heard they went out of business, that they went off the air, it really surprised me. LAPD helicopter flying overhead. But yeah, I grew up, on the radio, listened to a lot of radio. And let's not forget the best of the best, Casey Kasem, American Top 40. Those days, Sunday, 8 to noon. They'd start at 8 o'clock and they would count down the 40 biggest hits in the country. AT40, Casey Kasem. And now I'm not too far from the station that he used to broadcast from. He was a legend. And then you go even further back, Wolfman Jack. Wolfman Jack. In those days, if you were up at night, you could play around with the dial and you could listen to Wolfman Jack. I think he was broadcasting out of Tijuana, 250,000 watts at nighttime. You'd hear it all the way across the country. And then he kind of faded out. I actually heard him on an interview just before he died. And he was selling a book, and I was listening to him. I go, oh, Wolfman Jack, what a legend. The Grease Man is another one. And then on AM, there was a guy called Bruce Williams. I used to listen to him all the time. I worked at a place, and I had him on at night. Let's say Tiger. He'd call people Tiger. He was the kind of guy you would call for advice about anything. You wanted to refinance, you wanted to, take a trip around the world, you wanted to join the military, you wanted to join the circus. Anything you had a question on, no matter what the subject matter, he was the guy to call. Bruce Williams. I think he died. Who else was around? Hey, I have to mention Karen Blake. Karen Blake. Good memories with Karen Blake. I think she was on 94.5, whatever it became after WZOU. WZLX? No, maybe. But anyway, Karen Blake I met. Just one of those things that happened. So located where she was, and you couldn't even tell it was a radio station. It looked like one of those townhomes. So found it. I went in the front door, and there was a security guard in the front desk, and Karen Blake was on the top floor broadcasting. So I go in there, and he says to me, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I'm supposed to be on the show with Karen Blake. I'm a comedian. And he goes, oh yeah, follow me. So he pulls out all these keys. He starts opening doors. We go up the staircase, nice all glass building, we go up, it's all it's all opened. It's just a staircase in the middle. We went up, knocks on the door, and says, you guessed me, and shuts the door. And I'm in there with her now, and she's like looking at me, and she's like, and who are you again? And I made up a name, and I said I'm a comedian. And she goes, say something funny. And I go, well, like just like that. I go, I gotta get into it. And so anyway, I was she allowed me to talk on the air for a little bit. You know, I said hello, and she wanted to know what song I wanted to hear, and I told her. And then, you know, I felt like I shouldn't have been there, so I left, and that was it. And then many years later, probably like let me think here, maybe 20 years after that night, I emailed her, because she was still on the air. She still may be on the air, I have no idea, but I emailed her and I told her the story. I said, do you remember me? And I told her what happened that night, and she responded, and she said she did remember it. She said that she had a very vague memory of it, but she did remember it. I go, it's that easy to go up there, you know? I was kidding with the guy. I thought he was going to be like, let me call her up and see if you're supposed to be in there. Say, hey, Karen Blake, yeah, there's somebody down here claims to be a guest for tonight. And she would have been like, I don't have anybody scheduled. But he brings me up there, and she wasn't even scared. It was just her and her producer, and he was in another room. So, I mean, I could have probably stayed there all night, but I felt like maybe, you know, she was going to call the cops. And I didn't stick around for that. I had no reason to think that, but you never know. Be like, who's this guy trespassing? Karen Blake. And back then she was nice and young, you know, attractive lady. Still looks good now. I saw a picture of her not too long ago. Not bad. Not bad. Let me think, anybody else? Matt Siegel, Matty in the Morning. I met him a couple of times in real life. When I met him, he was very quiet, but when I see him in interviews, he's a yapper, talks a lot. That's not the impression I got from him. And then was it Tom Doyle or something? Yeah, I think it was him. He said to me, not fire department. He said to me, you know, there's a place not too far from here that sells 45s to radio stations. Quiet when I'm talking. I said, where's that? So he gave me the address, and I went to this place, and he was right. I entered inside, and they had 45s like you can't imagine. Stacks and stacks. They were all on shelves, and they were all alphabetical order, but anything you can imagine was in there. They had a catalog. You'd flip through it, it had a number, and you'd go find your 45. And they were $1. So I used to go by there once a week and buy anything I could think of. I had a collection of 45s like you can't imagine. They don't make 45s anymore. That's what's changed now. In the old days, an artist would record an album, and then the record company would hear the album and pick the best song on there as the first single. They would release it, you'd hear it on the radio, and at the same time they would release the 45 of that song with a B-side of some other non-hit. And then you would hear that song for 2 months before the album would come out. And you would go and you would buy the 45, and then based on that and radio play, American Top 40, Casey Kasem would play it in the countdown. So then 2 months would go by, and then you would go and get the album. You would anticipate, you know, the album. Very exciting time, you know. You'd hear the single for 2 months. Now, none of that. So you'd go there, you'd get it, and then you would hear the next single coming out. And if it was a really good album, you would get like 3 or 4 singles off of it. Now what they do is they release the album at the same time, and you can get the whole thing, or you can get the songs you want only. So you go there, you say, I only like track 3, 4, and 7, and that's all you buy. Totally different time. Back then it was like, you know, a process of waiting and the excitement of imagining what your favorite artist's album was going to sound like. I mean, that happened to me with Billy Joel. Back then I was a crazy fan. Now I'm a fan once again, but average. I'm an average fan now. Not like I was back then. I've kind of outgrown him because I was oversaturated with him. Now I'm into other stuff. But in those days, after the Innocent Man album came out, there were 3 years that went by before the Bridge album came out. And I kept trying to find information. In those days, you know, you couldn't find information like now. Now you just type in Billy Joel new album and give you all, you know, the updates. Not on him because he's done. But I went and I would look and it wouldn't be there. And then finally, I had gotten some information that the album was going to be released the following Tuesday. And I was as excited as, I don't know, a mouse on the moon, you know. I was very excited. And I went up there. I was the first one. Not that there was a line for that album, but I was the first one to get there for the store to open, and it was closed. And I looked inside and I saw a big poster of Billy Joel and the Bridge, and I was so excited. I couldn't wait to get my hands on that. They opened up the door. This was at Strawberries, and I went inside. I grabbed the album, put it on the counter, and I couldn't wait to get that. I still have that friend. I had a friend back then who had a nice system, so I went to his house and I put it on the turntable, and he had these really nice headphones, and I was amazed. I was hearing new material by Billy Joel after all these years of waiting. And my first taste of the album, aside of the single, which was Modern Woman, when I got the album, the first song on the album is Running on Ice, and to this day is my favorite song on that album. I always thought that was going to be the first single, like after it was released. The album first single was Modern Woman, and then I thought that one was going to be the next one. They never released it. I don't know, I mean, maybe for me it just played differently in my head, and maybe nobody else liked it, but I love that song. I love everything about it. The fast pace, the lyrics, the way he sings it. It's like da 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 da, you know, really fast. And I actually thought that was going to be a big hit, at least a top 10, but never was released. I remember they released This Is the Time and Matter of Trust, and then they released Baby Grand, which was like, I don't know what it was, number 73 on the charts. Did not, you know, do well, that song. Running on Ice was a much better song, but Columbia Records did not see it as a hit. I still see it as a hit, and he doesn't like it either. I think he doesn't like it because he can't sing it anymore. It's too fast for him. All his songs now are much slower. They're kind of like lazy sounding, and that's a fast, you know, that's a fast moving song. Running on Ice. He tried to do it twice. There's 2 live versions in recent times. There's an old one from '86 that's live. That one's really fast. But the ones he did now, a few years ago, they're very slow, and it's almost like he doesn't want to be there. You could hear the playing on the piano. It's not that sharp. And then he did it again, and he stopped halfway through, and he's like, kind of scrapped it. I just don't think he can do that song that well anymore, and so he doesn't like doing it. But for me, I love that song. When that comes on on my you know, in my motor car, I crank it up. I love everything about that song. You know, I mean, there's other good tunes. He doesn't like the album. He's always like, he's one of those guys that craps on himself. You know, it's like, that song sucks, that album sucked, you know, it's like, calm down before everybody starts thinking that way and you don't sell any albums. You know, so he keeps doing that, but that's a stinker, that wasn't good, you know, it's like, you shouldn't be the one telling people that your stuff sucks, or certain things of yours, you know, stuff suck. But yeah, that was a disappointment for me when that album came out and Running on Ice was not released. It's almost like he's making points, and the points are like dead on, like he's hitting the nail on the head constantly with that song. And then 3 more years went by, and he released Stormfront, which I think is an awesome album. Love that album from the first that I heard it, you know, like We Didn't Start the Fire was on that. I think that was the first single. And then the album came out, but that album is like all the way through awesome. Many, many good songs on that. Shameless, State of Grace, That's Not Her Style, Downeaster Alexa. So what else he's got there for a good song? And So It Goes, you know, that's a pretty good tune. Yeah. So, and that's my last. For me, that was the last good Billy Joel album. Then the other one that came out was totally different. He got rid of all the main guys that made him sound like himself. Got rid of the producer. Well, he got rid of him from Stormfront. He used Mick Jones on that. And then he got some Danny Kochkov guy. I don't even know what that is, but I think Don Henley recommended him. But I didn't, I remember I was down in Long Beach when that album came out, and I went and bought it. I was very excited. I went and got it at the mall, and then I had a Walkman, and I listened to it endlessly, walking up and down where the Queen Mary is on the other side on the boardwalk, Belmont Shore, up and down listening to that album. And it just did not click with me. There were, like, side A, if it were an LP, was good. But then when you get to the other side, it's almost like he started, getting worse and worse. By the time he got to the end, it was just like filler music. The last famous words, or the last words, that song uses that as like a prophecy, like, oh, I told you I was not going to write anymore. Listen to that song. I just felt those songs were all weak. Yeah, the first 4 or 5 songs, they're all right, but it's a different style. It's Billy Joel, but not Billy Joel, and it was the only album that I felt a little bit disappointed. Felt a little disappointed with that album. Not saying that the Cold Spring Harbor is a gem, but at least that sounded to me like Billy Joel. The other one, it was just different, and not in a good way. I don't know. I didn't even now. I mean, now it's a little bit, better sounding to me. Yes, I like Blonde Over Blue. That's a good tune. Shades of Grey I love, but that's because Liberty DeVito's doing the drums on that, so that sounds like a Billy Joel song to me. Great Wall of China is a good tune. What's that first one there? The one about the suburban, the malls and all. What's the name of that one? The Quiet Pine. Blue suits and bankers with their boredom in there. Give us this day our daily bread, daily merchandise. What did he say? No Man's Land. Who remembers when it all began? Right here in No Man's Land. Yeah, that's a good tune. I just felt like all the songs he did could have been better. Now, I know he originally recorded those songs with his original band. I would love to hear those versions. They got to be floating around somewhere. And then he re-recorded everything with the other guy. I don't know what happened, why the relationship, went downhill with the band. But after that, Billy Joel was done. No brand new stuff, except for that classical, the classical piano album that he released. Wasn't him playing on it, but that's it. Nothing. That's it. We've heard crickets, just live concerts, and I have seen him about a year and a half ago in Vegas live. So, but like I said, I was disappointed with the River of Dreams album. Yeah, and River of Dreams, decent song, but there was something missing. And he's like always complaining. Yeah, he goes, what's the point of writing new stuff if it's not going to be released, if it's not going to sell? I think it went triple platinum. What do you expect? That's your excuse? Why don't you get back with your old band? I know obviously you can't have the producer because he's no longer with us. Phil Ramone, awesome producer. He created the Billy Joel sound. I mean, that's what I associate Billy Joel with, that sound. And then he went to this new guy, Danny Kochkov, or what, Crotchmeyer, and it just was not Billy Joel anymore. And like I said, I felt the material was a little bit weak. Although, when you ask him what album is he most proud of, he says The Nylon Curtain, which I agree, that's a really great album, and River of Dreams. I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. To put River of Dreams next to The Nylon Curtain is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And anybody who knows anything about music will say the exact same thing, including Liberty DeVito, who agrees with me. And I agree with him. Anyway, that's it. That's it. Ciao.